On the 15th day of March, 44 before the Common Era, Rome awakens to whispers of blood and conspiracy. The greatest military commander the Republic has ever known will not survive the day. In the gilded halls of Pompey's theater, where marble statues cast long shadows across mosaic floors, a group of respected senators sharpens their daggers not in darkness, but in the cold light of what they call liberty. Julius Caesar, Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life, stands at the pinnacle of absolute power, and Rome's ancient republic trembles beneath his sandaled feet. The path to this fateful morning begins not with a single decision, but with decades of constitutional erosion and personal ambition colliding like tectonic plates beneath the Mediterranean world. For nearly 5 centuries, Rome has been governed by a delicate balance of power: the Senate, representing the aristocratic elite; the popular assemblies, giving voice to the plebeians; and an ever-rotating cast of annually elected magistrates, ensuring no single man could grasp the reins of state for long. This was the mos mirum, the way of the ancestors, the sacred tradition that separated civilized Rome from the barbarian kingdoms ruled by despots and tyrants. But tradition, like marble, can fracture under sufficient pressure. The late Republic convulses with civil wars, slave rebellions, and political violence that would have been unthinkable to earlier generations. Sulla marches legions into Rome itself, prescribing his enemies and rewriting the constitution by force. Spartacus leads 70,000 slaves in open revolt, crucified by the thousands along the Appian Way when the rebellion finally collapses. The first triumvirate and informal alliance between Caesar Pompey the Great and Marcus Licinius Crassus bypasses constitutional norms entirely, 3 powerful men dividing the Republic's offices and provinces among themselves like merchants parceling trade goods. Julius Caesar himself emerges from this chaos as a figure of contradictions that his contemporaries struggle to reconcile. Born into the ancient patrician, gens Julia, claiming descent from the goddess Venus herself, he nonetheless champions the populares, the political faction supporting popular assemblies, and land redistribution against the conservative optimates who defend senatorial privilege. His military genius is undeniable. In Gaul, he conquers territory spanning modern France, Belgium, and portions of Germany, adding vast wealth and countless slaves to Rome's empire. According to the ancient historian Plutarch, Caesar's Gallic campaigns result in the deaths of 1 million people and the enslavement of another million, statistics that simultaneously horrify and awe his contemporaries. Yet military glory alone does not necessitate dictatorship. What transforms Caesar from successful general to existential threat is his refusal to disband his legions when the Senate commands it. In January of 49 before the Common Era, Caesar faces a choice at the Rubicon River, the boundary between his provincial command in Cisalpine Gaul and Italia proper, where Roman law forbids any general from bringing armed forces. Roman governors routinely surrender their imperium, their military authority, when their terms expire, accepting temporary vulnerability as the price of constitutional order. Caesar crosses the Rubicon with the 13th Legion, reportedly declaring "Alia iacta est," the die is cast. Civil war becomes inevitable. The conflict between Caesar and Pompey Magnus devastates the Mediterranean world. Battles rage from Spain to Greece, from Africa to Asia Minor, at Pharsalus and Thessaly. Caesar's outnumbered forces shatter Pompey's larger army through tactical brilliance and veteran discipline. Pompey flees to Egypt seeking sanctuary, only to be murdered on the beach by advisors to the young pharaoh Ptolemy XIII, who mistakenly believed delivering Pompey's severed head will earn Caesar's gratitude. Instead, Caesar weeps, whether from genuine grief for his former son-in-law or theatrical display, remains debated, and installs Cleopatra VII as Egypt's sole ruler. By 44, before the Common Era, Caesar stands unchallenged. He holds the dictatorship without term limits, accumulates unprecedented honors, and begins appearing on coins of privilege previously reserved for the dead. The Republic's institutions still function, but as hollow rituals. Real power rests with one man, and in the shadows, knives are being sharpened. The conspiracy that will end Caesar's life grows not from a single grievance, but from a complex web of wounded pride, genuine ideological conviction, and calculated political opportunism. At its heart stands Marcus Junius Brutus, a a figure whose very name will become synonymous with betrayal across the millennia. Brutus descends from Lucius, Junius Brutus, the legendary founder of the Republic who expelled Rome's last king, Tarquinius Superbus, in 509 before the Common Era. For a man bearing this ancestry, Caesar's accumulation of monarchical powers represents not merely political disagreement, but ancestral sacrilege. The relationship between Caesar and Brutus adds layers of personal tragedy to the political drama. Caesar maintains a documented affair with Brutus's mother, Servilia, leading to persistent rumors, never conclusively proven, that Brutus might be Caesar's biological son. Whether or not this is true, Caesar clearly favors the younger man, promoting him to important offices, pardoning him after he sided with Pompey during the Civil War, and reportedly declaring that Brutus should be spared above all others if anything befalls him. This paternal affection makes what follows all the more devastating. Yet Brutus does not initiate the conspiracy. That distinction belongs to Gaius Cassius Longinus, capable military commander and administrator, whose resentment toward Caesar burns with personal intensity. Cassius also fought for Pompey at Pharsalus, and though pardoned, he never forgives what he perceives as Caesar's tyrannical usurpation. According to the historian Plutarch, writing in the late 1st and early 2nd centuries of the Common Era, Cassius approaches Brutus with carefully crafted appeals to his sense of ancestral duty. Anonymous messages appear, slipped beneath Brutus's door and left upon his magistrate's chair. "You sleep, Brutus, and you are no true Brutus." The psychological pressure mounts deliberately, systematically. The conspirators eventually number over 60 senators, though the core group remains smaller. Include Decimus Junius, Brutus Albinus, another Caesar favorite who commands legions in Cisalpine Gaul, Gaius Trebonius, a former consul, Tilius Cember, whose brother Caesar has exiled, and numerous others with varying motives. Some genuinely believe they are saving the Republic from tyranny. Others resent personal slights or frustrated ambitions. Still others simply calculate that Caesar's death will create opportunities for their own advancement. This mixture of high principle and base motivation characterizes much of Roman political violence. The conspirators face significant logistical challenges. Caesar commands absolute loyalty from his veteran legions. In his supporter, Marcus Antonius Mark Antony serves as consul and possesses both military competence and personal courage. Caesar also employs a Spanish bodyguard, tough soldiers who would die defending him. Any assassination attempt must occur when Caesar is isolated from these protectors, in a setting where armed men can gather without suspicion, and before he departs Rome on his planned military campaign against the Parthian Empire, scheduled to begin on the 18th of March. The Senate meeting at Pompey's theater provides the perfect opportunity. The Senate's usual meeting place, the Curia Julia, remains under construction following a fire. So sessions convene in the portico attached to the Theater of Pompey, one of Rome's grandest architectural monuments. Here, senators traditionally attend armed only with ceremonial daggers, and Caesar's bodyguard typically waits outside. The conspirators set the date, the Ides of March, the 15th day of the month when Caesar has agreed to attend a session to discuss various administrative matters before his departure. As the fatal day approaches, omens multiply. Soothsayers warn Caesar to beware the Ides of March. His wife Calpurnia Pisones experiences nightmares of her husband's murder and begs him not to attend the Senate. Sacrificial animals, when examined by priests, reportedly lack hearts or display other unfavorable signs. Whether these omens represent genuine phenomena, later embellishments, or deliberate attempts by co-conspirators to create an atmosphere of divine warning remains uncertain. Caesar, supremely confident in his own invincibility and perhaps weary of the constant security concerns that accompany absolute power, dismisses the warnings. On the morning of the 15th of March, he prepares to attend the Senate. History accelerates toward its violent conclusion. The morning of the Ides of March unfolds with deceptive normalcy across Rome's 7 hills. Markets open to the familiar cacophony of vendors hawking fish, bread, and pottery. Slaves carry water from public fountains. In the Forum Romanum, lawyers argue cases beneath the shadows of ancient temples. But in the homes of 60 senators, men hide daggers beneath their togas and steel themselves for murder. Caesar nearly doesn't attend the Senate session. Calpurnia's nightmares have shaken her so profoundly that she implores her husband to send word of illness and remain home. For a moment, Caesar wavers. Then Decimus Brutus Albinus arrives, one of Caesar's most trusted commanders, and unknown to the dictator, a core conspirator. Decimus argues persuasively. The Senate plans to offer Caesar the title of king for territories outside Italia, a significant honor. More importantly, canceling at the last moment because of a woman's dreams will make Caesar appear weak, even superstitious. Male pride and political calculation overcome divine warnings. Caesar departs for Pompey's theater. As Caesar's litter approaches the theater complex, a Greek teacher named Artemidorus attempts to hand him a note detailing the entire conspiracy, including names. The crush of petitioners surrounding Rome's most powerful man proves too dense. Caesar accepts the note but never reads it. The assassin's secret remains safe. Inside the portico attached to the theater, approximately 300 senators await, though not all know what is about to occur. The conspirators have positioned themselves carefully. Marcus Antonius, Caesar's capable supporter, and the session's presiding consul, must be isolated. Gaius Trebonius engages Antony in conversation outside the meeting chamber. A seemingly innocent delay that removes the one man who might physically defend Caesar. Caesar enters and takes his seat. The session begins with routine business. Then Tullius Cimber approaches with a petition for his exiled brother's recall. Caesar dismisses it. He has already refused this request. Cimber persists, grasping Caesar's toga in supplication, pulling it from his shoulder. This is the signal. Publius Cerilius Casca strikes first, stabbing Caesar in the shoulder or neck. Accounts vary. The wound is not immediately fatal. Caesar reacts with the combat instincts of a veteran commander, seizing Casca's arm and stabbing it with his stylus, the pointed iron pen used for writing on wax tablets. For a brief moment, Caesar might fight free, and the other conspirators converge, daggers flashing in the dim interior light. What follows is not the clean, dignified execution imagined by assassins who fancy themselves philosophical guardians of liberty. It is a frenzied, chaotic butchery. 23 stab wounds pierce Caesar's body as he staggers between senators, many of whom flee in terror. The conspirators, in their desperate haste, wound each other accidentally. Blood spatters across marble floors and senatorial togas. According to the physician Antistius, who examines the body afterward, only one wound, the second strike to the chest, proves immediately fatal. The most famous moment may be entirely apocryphal. The line "E tu, Brute" and "You, Brutus" appears in William Shakespeare's dramatic version written 16 centuries later, but not in contemporary Roman sources. Suetonius, writing in the early 2nd century of the Common Era, reports that some accounts claim Caesar said Kappa Alpha Sigma, Tau, Y Kappa Nu, Omicron Nu, you too, child. In Greek, when seeing Brutus among his attackers, though Suetonius himself expresses skepticism, other sources report Caesar said nothing, merely pulling his toga over his head in a final gesture of dignity. What is certain? Julius Caesar, 55 years old, conqueror of Gaul, victor of multiple civil wars, holder of unprecedented powers, collapses at the base of Pompey's statue. The supreme irony of dying before an image of his defeated rival is lost on no one. His blood pools around Pompey's marble feet, staining the tyrant killer's memorial. The dictator, Perpetuo, who believed his own legend of invincibility, dies like any other mortal, shocked, afraid, and alone. The Roman Republic's salvation, the conspirators believe, has begun. They could not be more catastrophically wrong. For several hours after the assassination, Rome exists in a state of suspended chaos. The conspirators, their hands and togas soaked with Caesar's blood, initially experience euphoria. They parade through the streets toward the Capitol Hill, brandishing their daggers and crying liberty. They expect crowds to celebrate them as the new Brutuses, modern incarnations of Rome's legendary founder who expelled the last king. Instead, they encounter fear and confusion. Roman citizens, uncertain whether a broader massacre is underway, barricade themselves indoors. The streets empty. Marcus Antonius, realizing what has occurred, flees to his home in Dan's military armor, expecting the conspirators might target Caesar's closest allies next. Marcus Aemilius Lepotus, Caesar's magisseur, equetta master of the horse commands, a legion stationed just outside Rome, and immediately mobilizes his forces. The conspirators suddenly grasp their fatal miscalculation. They have killed Caesar but planned nothing beyond the murder itself. They control no legions, have secured no strategic locations, and possess no coherent political program beyond the vague restoration of constitutional government. On the capital, reality sets in. Decimus Brutus and some others advocate immediately killing Antonius and Lepidus. Recognizing that Caesar's supporters command military force, the conspirators lack. Marcus Junius Brutus refuses, arguing that their cause stands for law and justice, not further bloodshed. This scruple, admirable in its idealism, proves strategically catastrophic. Antonius, left alive, becomes the crisis's pivot point. Marcus Antonius reveals himself as a consummate political operator. On the 17th of March, 2 days after the assassination, he convenes a Senate meeting not on the Capitol where the conspirators shelter, but in a temple in the Forum where Lepidus's soldiers can maintain order. The debate is extraordinary. Should Caesar's murderers be punished as criminals or praised as tyrannicides? Should Caesar's extensive legislative acts be honored or annulled? Cicero, the Republic's greatest living orator and no friend to Caesar, advocates a compromise, amnesty for the assassins, but ratification of Caesar's acts. This threading of the needle temporarily prevents renewed civil war. But Antonius holds the decisive advantage: Caesar's will and Caesar's body. At the public funeral on the 20th of March, Antonius delivers a masterful oration. The speech's exact words are lost later accounts, including Shakespeare's famous version, represent dramatic reconstructions. But its effects are documented. Antonius reminds the crowd of Caesar's military victories, his distributions of money to citizens, his clemency toward defeated enemies. He displays Caesar's bloody toga with its 23 stab wounds. He reveals that Caesar's will leave substantial gifts to ordinary Romans and bequeaths his private gardens across the Tiber as public parks. The crowd's mood transforms from grief to fury. Rioting erupts across Rome. Mobs hunt for conspirators, killing a tribune named Helvius, sin innocent of the conspiracy, but sharing a name with one of the assassins, and tearing his body apart in a frenzy. The conspirators flee Rome for their lives, their dreams of being hailed as liberators dissolved in flames and blood. Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus escape eastward, eventually reaching Greece and Asia Minor, where they command armies raised from Rome's eastern provinces. But the conspiracy's failure extends beyond immediate political calculation. Caesar has adopted his great-nephew Gaius Octavius Thurnus as his son and heir, making the 18-year-old who will rename himself Gaius Julius Caesar, Octavian Rome's most powerful political weapon. A Caesar by name, backed by Caesar's veterans, wealth, and legacy. The young Octavian arrives in Italia and immediately begins maneuvering for power, forming an uneasy alliance with Antonius and Lepidus in what history calls the Second Triumvirate. In November of 43, before the Common Era, the triumvirs formalize their power-sharing agreement and immediately institute proscriptions public, death lists targeting their political enemies. 300 senators and 2,000 equestrians are marked for execution, their property confiscated. Among the victims, Cicero, whose head and hands are displayed in the Forum, silencing forever Rome's most eloquent defender of republican government. The liberators, it seems, have drowned liberty in blood. The civil war to avenge Caesar now begins in earnest. In October of 42, before the Common Era, near the Macedonian city of Philippi, the Roman Republic dies not with a single dramatic assassination, but across two massive battles that determine civilization's trajectory for centuries. Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus, commanding forces drawn from the eastern provinces and allied kings, face the combined armies of Octavian and Marcus Antonius. The triumvirs march under the banner of avenging the murdered dictator. The liberators fight for the ancestral constitution and the Senate's supremacy. The first battle at Philippi unfolds chaotically. Brutus's forces successfully assault Octavian's camp. The young heir to Caesar's name reportedly escapes death by leaving his tent due to a warning dream while Antonius's veterans overwhelm Cassius's positions. Cassius, misunderstanding the battle's outcome and believing all is lost, orders his freedmen to kill him. He dies, not knowing Brutus has achieved victory on the other flank. 3 weeks later, a second engagement proves decisive. Brutus's army breaks against Antonian discipline. Rather than face capture, Brutus convinces a friend to hold a sword while he runs upon it, reportedly declaring, "O wretched virtue, you were but a name." The last significant defenders of the Republic perish on Greek soil far from Rome. The civil wars continue for another decade, but constitutional government is already dead. The question is no longer whether Rome will be ruled by one man, but which one man will rule Rome. That question resolves itself at Actium in 31 before the Common Era, where Octavian's admiral Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa defeats the combined fleet of Marcus Antonius and Cleopatra, the seventh of Egypt. Antonius and Cleopatra both commit suicide. Egypt, the Mediterranean's wealthiest kingdom and last major Hellenistic power, becomes a Roman province. Octavian stands alone and unchallenged, but Octavian, brilliant student of his adoptive father's fate, understands that naked dictatorship invites assassination. Instead, he constructs an elaborate constitutional fiction. In 27, before the Common Era, he theatrically restores the Republic, returning power to the Senate and people. In gratitude, the Senate grants him the honorific title Augustus, a revered one, and votes him extensive authority framed as emergency powers for protecting the state. He holds no explicit monarchy, yet controls all military forces, veto power over legislation, and tribunician, sacrosanctity, making his person inviolable. The system Augustus creates the Principat lasts for centuries. The Senate continues to meet, magistrates are elected, and republican institutions maintain their forms. But real power rests with the princeps, the first citizen, a military dictator wearing a constitutional disguise. The Roman Republic becomes the Roman Empire in all but name, and eventually in name as well. Julius Caesar thus achieves in death what he perhaps sought in life, the permanent transformation of Roman government from collective aristocratic rule to autocracy. The conspirators meant to save the Republic, but instead guaranteed its destruction. By killing Caesar without eliminating Caesarism itself, the concentration of military and political power in a single leader, they ensured the system would continue under new management. Modern interpretations remain divided. Some view Caesar as a visionary who recognized that Rome's Mediterranean empire required centralized governance beyond the Republic's fractious institutions. Others see a power-hungry demagogue who destroyed Rome's freedoms for personal glory. Some portray the conspirators as idealistic patriots fighting tyranny. Others condemn them as jealous aristocrats who murdered a reformer threatening their privileges. The truth likely encompasses elements of all these interpretations. What remains certain? On the Ides of March 44 before the Common Era, in Pompey's theater, senators of Rome murdered their republic as surely as they murdered Julius Caesar. The blood spilled that day washed away 5 centuries of constitutional government, replacing it with the reality of imperial rule disguised in republican clothing, a transformation whose consequences shaped Western civilization for to millennia. The knives intended to preserve liberty instead buried it forever. And tyranny, as it often does, arose from the grave of its would-be slayer.